Some people say, well, you're an advocate of violence. We can't have nothing to do with you. We can only deal with you if you renounce violence. Let me tell you what I am an advocate of. I am an advocate of ending oppression, exploitation, dehumanization, and degradation for people all over the world. I have spent most of my adult life actively working and fighting for this and wrangling in the level of theory and strategy to try to figure out how to actually fight through all the way and win. And it is on that basis that I have come to the conclusions that I have come to, that a revolution is needed, what kind of revolution it is, what it needs to aim for, and how we have to go about that. And I am not going to back off of that. But have you noticed that many of these people say, well, I can't have anything to do with you until you renounce violence? Don't say that to Barack Obama. Don't say that to Hillary Clinton. Don't say that to the Democratic Party. Don't say that to the U.S. government. Have you ever noticed? So let's talk about who are the real advocates and the real perpetrators of violence on a massive scale. First of all, this is a country founded on genocide and slavery, straight up. Huge numbers of Native Americans were slaughtered as their land was stolen, time after time, treaty after treaty broken. And then they were herded into concentration camps, those who remained, called reservations. Millions of Africans died in the passage from Africa to the Americas and those who survived in the millions were enslaved, whipped, brutally beaten, driven. As I said in the book Basics, the very first statement, there would be no United States as we now know it today without slavery. That is a simple and basic truth. And it is a truth that too many people, especially white people, don't want to face up to. And it's time we faced up to it and the full implications and meaning of it. If you read the book recently published called The Half Has Never Been Told about slavery by Edward E. Baptist. I don't know if he is a Baptist, but that's his name. He wrote this book called The Half Has Never Been Told, and there he gives life to the reality of what I just said, that we would have no United States as we now know it today without the brutal system of slavery. The former slave and tireless fighter against slavery and oppression, Frederick Douglass, said it exactly right. In the language of today, he said, yes, the USA is number one. With its brutal and depraved system of slavery, it is number one in the world in barbaric treatment of people and disgusting lies to cover up and justify this slavery. Or in the words of Frederick Douglass himself, in a speech he gave on July 4th, very appropriately, 1852, the United States is guilty of crimes which, as he put it, would disgrace a nation of savages. And he went on, for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. And that is still true. But is there today any big-time bourgeois politician who will denounce the slave owners who are at the core of the founding fathers of this country? Will Hillary Clinton? Will Barack Obama? White supremacy has been woven into the foundation and the very structure of capitalism in this country from the beginning, into the capitalist democracy that we live under, which is a democracy on the terms, in the interests, and under the dictates of the capitalist class, presiding over a system in which white supremacy is an integral and indispensable part without which they could not go on. Let's come closer to the present and just think about some of the violence advocated and carried out by the powers that be in this country. Just in the years 1950 to 1975, in Korea, Indonesia, and Vietnam, and other countries, they slaughtered nearly 10 million people, all with the aim of maintaining and expanding an empire of exploitation. And all this after they had already dropped atomic bombs on 2 Japanese cities at the end of World War II, instantly incinerating much of the civilian populations and subjecting many who had survived to excruciating suffering. And they still uphold doing that. Try to find one of them who will denounce it as a crime against humanity. And they are still developing new generations of nuclear weapons. Yes, under Obama, who said we should move to abolish them, they are developing new generations of nuclear weapons with which they threaten the very existence of humanity. In 1967, Martin Luther King stood in this church, and in speaking out against the Vietnam War, he said, "My government, the government of the United States of America, is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world." He was right then, and it has remained true ever since that time. Bob Dylan, in one of his early great songs, "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall," talked about going where the executioner's face is always well hidden. That's here. The executioner's face is always well hidden, but it's hidden in plain sight. Everybody sees the people who run the country, but they don't want to see that they are mass executioners. Everybody talks about, oh, Iran, it's a terrible place, run by terrible Islamic fundamentalists, and it is, and they are. But nobody talks about what the U.S. did in overthrowing a popular government in Iran in the 1950s and creating the conditions that made it more favorable for horrific Islamic fundamentalists to come to power in Iran. They talk about ISIS and Osama bin Laden, and they argue about who actually killed Osama bin Laden, writing books and arguing. But the fact is, as horrific as Osama bin Laden and ISIS are, as much as they are brutal oppressors, dehumanizing, degrading, viciously slaughtering people, they can only dream of doing this on the scale on which the government of this country has done it for decades and centuries. In just this country, since the year 2000, the police have executed thousands of our youth, overwhelmingly black and Latino youth. And then they say, well, yes, but you know, there's all this violence among these youth. They're killing each other. This is true. Tens of thousands of our youth have died in this way in the past few decades, and this too has to stop. We have to stop it. But you're not going to stop it by telling them to be respectable and pull up their pants and act like good children. They know this system has nothing for them. They know it doesn't care about them, so they don't care. And we have to give them a vision, a program, and a way of standing up and fighting, and something to fight for that can make them want to change and take their anger and direct it where it needs to be directed. People say, well, if you fight in this way, you're going to become as bad as the people you're fighting against. Look at the Civil War. Civil War finally put an end to slavery. The Civil War finally put an end to slavery. And when they were fighting, hundreds of thousands of people died in the Civil War fighting in slavery. When they were allowed to do so, nearly 200,000 black people joined in the fight to end slavery. In doing so, were they wrong? In taking up arms to crush the system of slavery and the slave owners, did they become just the same and just as bad as the slave owners and the slave system? No, they did not.